In this lesson, I want to circle back to our search bar because we really didn't do anything to it other than build out the UI. So let's go to Airbnb and look at what they have here. They have an expanded search bar. So we can select it and type in a destination, select our check-in and check-out and add some guests, and then search properties based on those parameters. Right now, we don't have any of that. If we went and previewed this on our website, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So let's add that functionality. So how are we going to do this? Well, initially when you're on Airbnb's website, it's going to look something like this. And then when you click it, it expands and this hides and a new search bar pops up. Of course, there's a ton of different ways you can probably do this. I'm going to try and pick the easiest one for us. And I think that's going to be just simply hiding this and showing a different search bar when it's clicked. But how do we do that? Well, let's get into it. The first thing we need to do is make a group around this initial search bar group because we need to add something right below it in a column form. And you can see here that we are in row. So we're going to need another group. So let's go and drag one on the screen. Make it a decent size so you can drag your search bar group in there. So let's drag it in there. Now we have our search bar within another group. Let's put our image on the left side of this. And it needs to be outside of the group, so drag it even more. There we go. Now this looks horrible. We know this, but we have what we need as far as formatting now. Now we can paste another search bar in there. And let's give it a column format. So come to our layout. Right now it's fixed. We'll select column. So that looks a lot better. Now for this, it needs to be a lot bigger, and we need to allow for the where and check-in and check-out input fields. So let's go back and do that, because right now we don't have any space. So let's make this whole group bigger. We need the layout to take up all of the space available. Give it that 0 min width. Let's see what that looks like. Still not taking up all of the space. So what can we do? Uncheck fit width to content. And then you can see it drags all the way over here to the very end. So that's what we want. And let's do the same thing for the search bar with inside of it. So we'll uncheck the fixed width. We'll make it 0. And then let's get rid of that 400 max and make it infinite. There we go. So it's already taken up more space. We need to make it bigger though as far as its height. So let's give it a min height, say 100. So we need some space to work with here. And that should be good enough. So let's actually just delete this whole group right here. Now the first thing we need to drag over is a group for each of the text and input pairs. That way we can put them in a column format. So let's drag a group over. And we're going to need 3 of these. So 1, 2, 3. And then inside, let's actually delete those because I want to make the text and then the input. So we'll drag a text box in like so. Then I want to copy this. Paste it over. Now we have 3 of them. First thing we'll do is give it a column formatting. Now let's make sure everything is centered. So we'll come over and center it horizontally. We'll leave it at the top for now. We might change that in a second. We'll come to the layout of this parent and make it a column. Move this to the center. And the same for the last group. Again, we probably could have done this before and then just copy and pasted it over. But nonetheless, we'll get it done. Let's go to the text box. We'll center it. And that is good to go. Now let's format a little bit better than it is right now. We'll drag the search icon over, not the icon itself, but the whole group. Drag it over, let's not move everything. Drag it over again. There we go. So it's now on the right side, right where we want it. Now underneath these, we're gonna need to put our input fields. So what do we have? Well, we have a search area, and then we have our calendars. So we know exactly what we need to do. We've done this before. So under this, we're going to have search or location or whatever you want to call it that's best for the user. Then we'll have check-in, and then we'll have a check-out. Great. So under search, we're going to have a search bar. So let's go select our search bar or search box, drag it under our search, and then let's fix the layout a little bit to center align. Let's see what that looks like. Let's actually move the text over to the left. Come to appearance, and we'll align that to the left. That looks a lot better. Now, as far as the check-in, let's go ahead and get our date and time picker, and we'll do the same over here. Just drag and drop it in, and you can copy and paste that and move it over to checkout as well. Now, let's left align this check-in. Select check-in, left align checkout. Now, let's center our date and time picker, so just make sure those are centered and aligned like so. There you go. Now you have the text aligned with its input field below it. So that looks all right. Let's move these boxes down to the center if they're not already. So right now they're top aligned. We actually want to move the entire thing down. So let's do our vertical alignment to the center. And that looks a lot better. We almost want to even center the content within. So let's do that as well. Select our group, content alignment in the center. Great, so that looks a lot better. You can see here that we need a little bit more space. Now, what can we do to create this space? We don't really need to resize the whole element. And in fact, we could probably move this over. Let's give it a space between and see what happens. Great, so that looks a lot better. Now, one thing you can also do here, which we haven't really played around with too much in this module, is padding. And I can just show you what that looks like really quick if we were to give this a padding. So let's come to our layout, scroll down, we'll go to padding. And then on the left, we could give it, say, a padding of 20 pixels. You can see it gives it more room. So it pushes kind of everything in the middle. Let's actually leave that. I like that look. We'll give it a 20 padding all around and see what that looks like. So you can see it got a lot bigger, a lot more space in between. And remember, that's the distance between this element and the border. So that gave us a nice padding, gave us some space between those elements. So it looks a lot better. Now, let's bold these just to make it look a little bit better than it does now. So now we need to come up with some functionality of when to show which search bar. Let's remember to name this something that we're going to know what it is. So search bar full, or we'll say full display, something like that. So search bar, we'll say full search bar. So now we know the difference of, let's see what this one's called, search bar copy. We'll rename this search bar mini or just regular search bar. We can leave it like that. We'll know the difference. So what's the next thing we need to do? Well, we need to create some sort of identifier and then display a search bar based on the identifier. So what are we going to use? A state variable. We're going to say a state variable is either yes or no. Depending on the value, we'll display the small search bar or the fully expanded one. So let's create that custom state variable. We'll come and edit our parent group because we need it at the most parent level. And the reason being is we need to access it in both of these children component. So it needs to be in a component which they share. That'll be our parent. So we'll come to edit our group A, and we need to give this a name so we know what we're looking for. Instead of group A, we can call it something like group search state, something like that, where you're going to identify where that state variable is. And let's come and create that state variable. So we'll come up to our I, and then we can select custom state, and we'll just call it something like full display. Then the state type is going to be or yes or no. So full display will either be yes or no, and then we'll display, the search bar that is associated with a full display. So we'll create that. The default value is going to be no. And when it's no, we want to display that first search bar initially. And then if it changes to yes, we want to display the full search bar. Now that we have our state variable set, let's go ahead and define our conditionals. So we'll select our search bar, go to edit, come to our conditional. Let's define another condition. So we need to select that parent group which holds our state variable. So in this case, it's that group search state. Select that, and then we'll select full display and is yes. So it's initially going to be no. Remember, by default, we selected no. If it changes to yes, we actually want to hide this element. So we'll uncheck the element is visible, come to layout, and just make sure you have collapse when hidden is checked. That way it collapses and this full search bar snaps up to the top and it's not floating down here still. Now let's do the same conditional for our full display. Come and select our full search bar. We'll edit, come to conditional, and let's do the same thing. Let's select when group search state, its full display is no, then we don't want to display this element. So we'll come and select this element is visible, and we'll select no. We don't want to display it if the full display state value is no. Great, but now we need to go to our workflows and actually associate a click and change the variable based on the user click. So let's go to our edit, our workflows, and we'll come and create an event. We're looking for elements. So we want to select an element is clicked, and we want something to happen. So when an element is clicked, we'll pop up. Let's highlight this orange so we can differentiate from the rest. The element we're looking for is actually that search bar. So we'll select our group search bar. Now we want to define a conditional because we need two different actions based on that state variable. So initially it's going to be no. Now, if a user clicks this element, we want it to be yes. But first, let's define the initial conditional. that lets us run this action. So only when is the search state group, its full display is no, do we want to run this action? And that's going to be the initial state. Remember, when they come on the page, it's going to be no initially. If they click it, we want to change it to yes. And when it changes to yes, then we're displaying those different search bars. So let's come and add an action. And for this, we want to change a state. So let's come to element actions. We'll select our set state. And for the element, we're going to want to select that parent. So group search state again. We'll select the state variable. And let's change it to yes. Great. So now that should trigger our UI conditionals to display the proper search bar. We also need one that we'll create later that if we click an X or a different icon, it will change back to no and display this smaller search bar again. Let's go see if this isn't working correctly or if we need to change anything. We'll come to our index. Let's preview what we have. Okay, so look what's going on here. You can see that we have our search bar, but it's pushed up to the top and we don't want it to be. That means something right here is taking up space. But what's taking up space? Well, it's going to be that other search bar. Now we need to fix this. So let's come back to our UI and go to our nav bar. Now the first thing I want to do is actually realign this element right here to center it, just like so. The other thing you need to check is all of the elements are working correctly. So as far as the conditionals go, we can recheck our conditional and it should be hidden. The layout, let's collapse. But for some reason, space is still being taken up. So what's left? Well, probably checking element heights. If we select our group, you can see that we still have a min height here. So it's always going to be 190. And you can see the container alignment's at the top, and so is the vertical. We don't want that. We want those both in the center. We also don't want a minimum height, so we need that to be 0. Let's come and see if that fixed the problem. Let's go to index. We'll preview. Now you can see that it is aligned and the space is distributed correctly. Let's click it and see what happens. We'll run next. You can see the conditional is now changed to true. So we change that from is no to yes. Let's run next. And then you can see our search bar gets displayed instead. And that is exactly what we wanted to do. And that's where I want to leave off in this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to go over exactly how to make this search bar work, as well as the check-in and check-out. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next lesson.